Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 643. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying, is so glad his free punchline letter campaign is seeming to pay off, and of course he remains the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode we have a pretty big Speeding Bullets segment where we go in depth on the free comic book day issue of Dark Crisis. We also talk about Joker issue number 14 and the Punchline backup, honor some of the recently passed comic book artists in a special segment devoted to that. We announce our brand new contest, so we have a lot of content for you on this episode that we're excited to start sharing with you. We are, of course, always sponsored by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
They're doing something really cool for Dark Crisis. One, they're relisting issue 1. So if you didn't get it last month, and you're like, I should have got it, you got another chance to do it. Plus, they're doing a special 50% discount. So if you ordered it last month, don't worry. They're adjusting the prices so you're getting it covered. Or you can buy it fresh new. Plus, we have a new Cover J variant cover, also at 50% off. On top of that, we've got Dark Crisis number 2, and we've got Dark Crisis World Without Superman, written by, of course, Tom Kane, 40% off, and Dark Crisis Young Justice number 2 at 40% off. So we've got a lot of Dark Crisis stuff coming to you. Thank you, DCBS.
I was glad to see that DC's offering the additional discounts to drum people into Dark Crisis. I think it's really important when you do events like this to draw people in, give them a chance to participate in the event. So that was kind of a cool thing, because that happened between our last episode that they offered the additional discount. Over at InStockTrades.com, we've got the deals of the week, and I love these because you get books that are at 50% off that you don't normally realize were out and things like that. It's a great way to spotlight some cool books. In this case, I've been collecting these, Batman the Dark Knight Detective, and they're on volume 6 right now. These are stories by Peter Milligan, Marv Wolfman, with art by Jim Aparo. And it's $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. DC 1 million, as we're talking about the multiverse and DC's events and histories, this is the collected edition, the omnibus of Grant Morrison's work with DC 1 million. This is a $99 omnibus that's 50% off, only $49.99. Tales of the Super Pets, getting excited for the film? $19.99 regularly, 50% off. It's $9.99. It's under $10 to get this book. So I thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for sponsoring our show, sponsoring our upcoming contest, and just always being a great way to shop. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we discussed on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
Jim, to kick off Speeding Bullets, we have some sad news, and Neal Adams passed away. I was at the Fan Expo Cleveland, and I was at one of Kevin Smith's panels. It was actually Jay and Silent Bob Grow Old. They did like their podcast there, and it was a paid event afterwards. And he announced before it started that Neal had passed away, and that they were releasing. He's done a show called Fat Man on Batman. It's now morphed into Fat Man Beyond because like he's done everything he wanted to do on strictly the Fat Man on Batman end. So the show has taken on a larger tone with what it's doing. But what he did that was cool is he had done at least 3 episodes with Neal Adams and collected them as an omnibus podcast and released them. So if you go to Fat Man Beyond and subscribe to it, you'll see it wasn't this week's episode, it was the last one. He released this omnibus of his conversation with Neal Adams. It's fascinating. It's like 6 hours long because it's multiple episodes put together. But it's got me to want to read again Batman Odyssey. Remember we talked about that way back when and how, it was very dense and it was one of those stories. It was almost very Grant Morrison-like in the sense that trying to figure out where he was going with it. But what's gotten me wanting to read it again is I'm realizing this was something that I really needed to read multiple times. And he always intended it to be like a novel, more of a. It was a combination of a comic book and some of the tropes that you would find in a more dense novel, trying to really push the medium. He talks about how by the time you read issue 13, you should be able to go back and reread the whole thing and pick up the pieces along the way, the clues. Like there's a lot in the story that's building towards the culmination. And it was meant to be this discovery along the way that we were encountering. So it's made me appreciate the work when you're like sitting there going, okay, he intended this. I mean, this was a plan of his. I'd like to go back and read it knowing what he intended for the work. But the reason why, in particular, I want to shout him out, Neal Adams came into my life at a time where, so I grew up with Batman from the 60s TV series. I didn't know that it was a parody. So I grew up being in awe of Batman and just, loving the whole universe. He was my hero. I wanted to follow him. I wanted to follow Robin. What Adam West and Burt Ward did just made me completely captivated by the character. I graduated slowly into the Saturday morning cartoons, because that's what was available to me, which from the TV series started to take on a more serious, like, superhero adventure tone. I didn't realize that as I was growing up, the property, my exposure to Batman was growing along with it. Then eventually I got into comics and book and record sets. And my earliest memories of Neal Adams' artwork, because, I was born in 71, so you figure when I got old enough that I started actually really starting to appreciate comics and reading comics, a lot of that was coming from the book and record set, it was a comic book that, like, you'd throw on the record and you'd get to hear it come to life, which was kind of how they build them. But Neal Adams' artwork was there, and I was captivated by this because it was more mature artwork compared to what I was used to in the comics. I mean, in the cartoons. And obviously what I'd also gotten from Adam West. I would not have been able to pin that down at the time that was what was happening to me. But I also was familiar with his work from Brave and the Bold. But some of that stuff was more picking it up at, I've mentioned before on the show, like at flea markets and things like that. Not when they actually came out. I was kind of picking them up after the fact. Didn't realize that I wasn't at that age where I was appreciating names of artists or, just appreciating the visual style, where I was like, wow, the cape in particular, and the way that, it was a longer cape. The cape was kind of alive. He was a lot more of this physical presence. And it was really cool, where you're like, wow, Batman's like something, like continuing to become something more. And that was his artwork. I didn't realize till, years later, especially when they released the 3 Batman Illustrated volumes. And if you have never checked these out, these were re-releases from DC. There's 3 volumes. It's Batman Illustrated by Neal Adams. It's been collected also as one big omnibus hardcover. Neal Adams went back and recolored it all. So there's something worth picking those up just to see his desire as far as what he would have liked those colors to be, or what, as he grew as an artist, what his sensibilities were when they did that work. They are stunning. It's funny. I own them physically and I own them digitally. I will say this. There is something about the color work in that particular collection, that and DC Illustrated by Neal Adams. The paper. There's something different about the color on the paper. It works really, really well. I'm usually one that, whether you like digital or you like paper, it doesn't matter, because there's something to both. I'm glad I own them digitally because it's nice to be able to pull them up on my iPad and be able to read them. And I'm actually starting to go through and reread them now just because he recently passed. But I've got to say, there's something to those volumes in paper. So if you don't own them, pick them up. It's well worth it if you are an art fan at all. It's a great way to experience Neal Adams' work, and they've been recolored. I mean, that was something that was done during that time. He also did a great run with Roy Thomas on X-Men that predated Chris Claremont's run. I did not get to read that until years later when Marvel had collected them. And I didn't realize like how much really cool foundational work that he did before the X-Men team that I really grew to know and love. How much I really enjoyed his work with Roy Thomas on that particular book. So he's just an amazing talent. It's an amazing loss. It's always sad when we lose writers or artists that have contributed to the comic book medium, because it means we don't have an opportunity to see additional work. And he continued pushing the medium straight on through to before his death, where we were getting new content from Neal Adams, where he was trying to push the medium. And the Batman versus Ra's al Ghul series that just came out recently, I really enjoyed. And he's an artist that I'm glad I got to know more later in my life, because as a kid growing up, the one that I was reading with consistency was Jim Aparo, or Aparo, and I apologize for name butchery there. As a child growing up, you kind of have frozen in your brain how you thought it should be pronounced. That was the first Batman artist that I started to get to know his name. Looking back, Neal Adams was really the first one that caught my attention. I just didn't know at the time that that's who it was. Speaking of sad losses, I also want to jump to George Perez. And similar to Neal Adams, it's really hard to sum up George Perez and the contributions to comics. So I'm going to stick to personal on that one again. My first exposure to him, we did it recently on the show, was the Justice League crossover, JLA, JSA crossover that he did. Again, I didn't know it was him. It wasn't until Teen Titans with Marv Wolfman that I became aware of his name, because that was right around the time I was becoming a big fan of Uncanny X-Men with Chris Claremont, and I was getting to know Claremont and Byrne, and I was becoming very well of writers and artists. Over on the DC side, it was Wolfman and Perez, and I'm like, it was, talk about a stereo hit of just amazing talent. What they were doing with Titans, I was thinking to myself, like, I want to read something George Perez, just to kind of embrace that. And I was going to go to Wonder Woman, because I've referenced on the show how much I loved his Wonder Woman run. But comfort food for me is Titans. Yeah. And I am going to go back, and I've got them queued up. I'm going to start rereading again the Wolfman and Perez New Teen Titans run. Just that opening kickoff of that was so stellar. And it really is comfort food. But he's touched Justice League, Titans, Wonder Woman, the Avengers. There's been so many cool things that George Perez has been involved with. If you don't know either of these artists, if you're a newer reader, or just your reading pathways has not had you cross any of their work, do yourself a favor. We are in a great time where physically and digitally, it's very easy to pick up collected editions of their work. Do yourself a favor and grab something that's on your list that you maybe haven't had a chance to read, or you haven't heard of, or if you're a longtime reader, go back and revisit. Their work holds up. It's really worth seeking that out. They're really amazing talents, and it's a sad loss. I mean, anytime we lose anybody in this industry, it's sad, because it's a creative medium, and everybody who is a part of this industry contributes something new, adds something new to our choices. And I really appreciate what they've... I think about my life, and I'm like, wow, these are guys that have contributed to comics, this medium that I've loved for most of my life. And I mean, they've been a part of comics for longer than I've been... Neal Adams' case, longer than I've been alive. But you look back and I'm like, I don't remember a time where the two of them weren't a part of comics for me. So it's, wow. Just a very, very sad loss. And my heart goes out to their families. And in my heart, I'm thinking to myself, thank you for your contributions, because they've been so important to me. And I can't really express that in words, just how much their work has meant.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part. Trying to express what it means to all of us. And that's, I'm seeing all these really cool, touching stuff that people are saying, their interactions, and just, the one-on-one meetings and the conversations at cons, and just the general, it's both creators. They were true fans of the medium. And I think that, for me, is always the thing that touches me the most about them. And the thing that makes it the hardest, is that these weren't just, talented, amazingly talented people. They were comic book fans as well. They were us who could do what we love. I'm a fan of comic books, but I have no illusions that I have any skills to be in the media, to be a creator. And so to see people like me who love this medium, who then also have that skill to create something amazing, is always that thing that brings you closer connection to them. And I unfortunately I do not have any one-on-one interactions with either of them, really, and I feel bad, because I didn't get a chance to have that. Hey, how you doing? I love your work. That moment, But it's seeing, just again, you see the outpouring, you see the love, and it's, it stinks, but you hold on to the fact that there's still this legacy, and because you've seen it. There's all these creators out there who are like, he was such an influence on my life. He was such an, and all these different people out there, on both of them. It's, so it's the legacy continues, and in a way, when the person's gone, but they're never gone, they'll never truly be gone. There'll always be a piece of them out there. And, if you haven't had a chance, if you haven't had a chance to read any of their work, seek it out, man, because it's amazing. And the DC Infinite app, if you got a subscription on it, dive deep into that, because they'll tell you they're all over there, and you can find some amazing stories. You can't go wrong if you see their name on it. You're going to enjoy it flat out, because there's some amazing stuff in there, whether it's some beautiful, because like you talked about, with the artwork on the Batman artwork, it always to me had like a sort of a mystical styling to it, but not. I don't want to say like he made it. It still was not, Batman wasn't magical, but there was always something about, like how you talk about his cape, how it flowed. To me, it always had that kind of like energy, feel to it. And I was like, that always looked really cool. Some of his artwork on that. And, Wolfman and Perez, come on, that's like unbelievable.
I'm going to recommend to you too. I know you don't listen to a ton of podcasts, but seek out that Fat Man Beyond. Yeah. Because to hear Neal Adams describe his artwork and what he was trying to do, especially in that era, because you think back, he was doing that early in the 70s. He was, and actually, his initial work was coming off of the 60s Batman show. So the show was on the decline, and comics were having to shift in a new direction. And he talks a lot about that, about the challenges of bringing that out. He also has some great bits about Jon Stewart, because he had heavy involvement in that. Hard Traveling Heroes. Kevin Smith mainly focuses on Batman because it was a Batman podcast, but Neal has a great Jon Stewart story on there that I'll let him, you really should listen to Neal Adams tell it. I give the highest possible recommendation. It's 6 hours long, and I'm 1 hour away from finishing it. I've been when I've been doing yard work and I've been doing a lot of stuff outside, it has been great to throw that on and just listen and just really just bask in the experience. Terrific interviews. Kevin Smith did a great job of knowing when to interject himself and ask questions, but also knowing when to pull back and just let Neal speak. And it was, that's it. There's a talent to that. It's really, really well done. If you follow anybody listening, I know we get a lot of our listeners, a lot of people have been pointed our way from Peter Rios, from the Daily Rios, and from Comic Geek Speak. Peter is so much better at social media than I am. He's done a great job of putting out tributes to George Perez. And if you take a look back at his feed, it's been really cool because he is a huge Perez fan, which I am too. But Peter has done this really great job of just collecting artwork and images from covers and things like that, and honoring the man. And I really have just enjoyed that along the way as he's been doing his cancer battle. So it's something that's worth seeking out. Speaking of conventions, and it actually ties into something you just said, I was fortunate enough for both Neal Adams and George Perez to have gotten sketches from them both, gotten signatures from them both, and prints from them both at conventions. If you haven't gone to a comic convention, do yourself a favor and do that. Stop by the artist's table. I am the biggest mumble mouth when it comes to meeting artists because I think I overly focus on what to say. You know, like I want to come in and say that cool thing or that right thing, and ultimately I always get it wrong because I try too hard, if that makes any sense. So
Yep.
then I'll usually say this awkward thing, and then I've got nothing else to say, which instead of just like relaxing and being conversational, I kind of messed that up because they're people that are important to me, and you want to say something to them of note, you know, so that way you can kind of make a mark or I don't know. I think I get caught up in all that. And it's the wrong approach. I think just relaxing and, you know, thank you, whatever you want to say, and then just chatting with them is great. Fan Expo Cleveland just came around, and I was so worried we were not going to get a big convention in Cleveland when Wizard left because we hadn't had one. We had conventions, like lots of mini conventions, and please know, I'm not knocking those. I think local community conventions are awesome. So, but there's a difference between them, right? So you get that local community, that intimate community convention, then it's nice to have that big event too. And if done right, I think there can be a good synergy of the big event increasing a convention awareness and getting people to maybe go to some of the smaller, local, more community events. So Fan Expo Cleveland happened. It was their first one in Cleveland. I didn't know what to expect, you know, if it was going to be like a step back from Wizard or if it was going to evolve what Wizard was doing. It was kind of a little bit of A and a little bit of B, and none of that's a criticism. There were some things that, because Fan Expo's been around for a while, that clearly they have nailed for years. I thought there was a really cool balance of comics, gaming, anime, and celebrities and voice actors. So there was a nice balance of those things. I thought the comic area, you know, where the artist, like kind of the artist alley, was very well represented. I hope that continues because I felt like there was really something for everybody in the groups that I just mentioned at the convention. They made a really good use of the show floor. The dealer space was very easy to navigate. You know, sometimes we've gone to conventions where it's like the aisles are so small that it's like that it's annoying to get through. There was on Saturday, which is always for every one of those weekend cons where there's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday is usually the roughest day to navigate. I didn't feel that at all from this, yet it was very well attended. I thought they did a great job of moving the space along. I did get a VIP badge. I did a lot of pictures this time around because Kevin Smith was there with the whole Clerks cast. So I did like the group picture with them. I wanted to do a redo of my picture with Shatner because the one that I have is not all that great. So I got to do a redo of that. A lot of celebrities I got to meet, but from the comic end, I just want to go to some people that I met a number of comic book people, and I was nice enough to go through those areas. But some of the ones that I really wanted to spotlight, Tony Harris from Starman. I have never had the opportunity to meet him. He was the initial artist on Starman with Jack Knight. And it's one of my all-time favorite books. And I got a chance to meet him and get a signature and get a print from him. This really cool print. Ted Sikora from Pama and Bloom and Tap Dance Killer, local Cleveland talent, was there. You and I were lucky enough to see his booth back when it was Apama. You know, they had none of the spin-offs had happened yet. Apama really was the spin-off of the Hero Tomorrow film. It was nice to see all the property that he has there now because he has quite a few comics, collected editions, things like that available. There's a whole universe now. And it was great to see him at a con where it was so well attended. Mike Grell was there from Longbow Hunters, and he's somebody who I've never had an opportunity to meet before. He could not have been nicer. It was really cool to get something signed by him and to have a conversation with him. Everyone was just pleasant. They did, Brian Azzarello was there, Pete Tomasi was there. I'm going to stop there and no insult to any other talent that was there from across comics, because there were talents from Archie, there was talents from Marvel, from DC. If I start going, I'm going to start leaving people out that I don't want to, because there was an amazing talent. One of the cool things they did this convention, and there have been other conventions before, but I never sat in on them. They had these draw-offs where, like, it was two artists that were in a panel. They would take audience suggestions. And audience members could throw out anything fun, like Spider-Man versus Archie, for example, or somebody threw out something about a threatening villain in a non-threatening situation. And they would throw out like multiple suggestions. And what they would do is take little nuggets of all of them, or sometimes just grab one of them and do a sketch. And it was both artists doing a similar style of sketch, their interpretation of it, though, if that makes sense. Cool. So being that all artists have their own unique approach, it was cool to see the different interpretations. And they'd auction them off at the end. You get a ticket when you went in, and your number was called. You would get the artwork. During their drawing, they would talk about their history in comics and take questions from the floor. And it was really just a fun, intimate experience. And I'm highlighting this because if there's anybody listening that hasn't gone to a convention, there are so many different events going on throughout the convention. It's not just walking around the show floor and buying stuff or stopping by tables and thanking people or getting pictures. There's panels, and the panels are very diverse. From conversational, informational ones to pop culture and geek culture ones to what I just mentioned right now, to spotlight panels, to much larger, where a celebrity will be up on the stage having a talk, like a William Shatner or somebody like that, having a whole conversation with the room. Fan Expo Cleveland really had everything. I did the VIP this year, which allows you then the ability to pre-purchase the VIP when it becomes available for next year. I am all in on that again. I was only able to go Friday and Saturday. Sunday, I actually had to go for work to another conference, and it just wasn't going to work out that I could go on Sunday. I wanted to go back on Sunday, which says a lot because Friday was long, Saturday was long. Saturday was a late night because the Kevin Smith event went till 10 o'clock. So it went from 7:30 to 10 o'clock. So think about it. I was actually there at the opening on Saturday and stayed the whole stretch. So I was jonesing to go back on Sunday, which says a lot about the quality of variety that they're offering there. I really got my money's worth and really appreciated the convention. So they're doing a fan expo in Cincinnati in September. I'm all in on that one, just because I enjoyed this one so much. So it was just great. You know what was great about it, Jim? To be at a con again with people.
Yeah.
And I know it's a strange thing to say, but, in light of COVID and everything and not being able to do that, they did a great job with like celebrity pictures of letting celebrity talent choose whether or not they wanted plexiglass in between them. And it seemed to be an age-driven choice. William Shatner is like 91 now, and he had the plexiglass. And I didn't, here's the thing. There was a couple people complaining. Most people were of the attitude of course he'd want that.
Yes.
and I was of that mindset. I'm like, I get it. So I got a picture, and I'll end with this. I got a picture with William Shatner with the plexiglass, and he couldn't have been more pleasant. And I was glad because my first picture with him is kind of, it's a weak one. I don't know if it was just a bad shot or whatever. So this one, he was smiling, I was smiling. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I walked out with that. So I thought plexiglass was going to be the thing for everybody. I didn't realize that it was a choice. I just kind of went in there and I'm like, okay, they're doing plexiglass. This is fine. It's cool. Next one's Kevin Smith and the whole Clerks crew. He walks up and hugs you. and not me, he did with everybody. And asking people names. And I mean, the whole crew couldn't have been nicer. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, this is all bets are off. And it was fun. So conventions are awesome. If you have not been to one and you're on the fence as far as whether or not you should go, I can't recommend them enough. Do yourself a favor, go up to the artist table. Don't worry if you're like me and you're a mumble mouth when it comes to them and you're going to say the wrong thing. Just remember to say thank you. Yeah. They really do appreciate that, and it's nice to do that. Remember, their tables cost them money. So when you go up to the table, if there's an opportunity to buy a print or, you don't have to spend a ton of money, you can contribute to the fact that they're there by purchasing some of those things. And, it's okay to buy one of their prints or buy a sketch or something like that to help pay for their table. Because that's what you end up doing at the end of the day and making that convention worth them coming to. That's kind of a way to say thank you. And you can do it in a very cost-effective way. Like you can buy original pages. So if you're somebody that's like, I've always wanted an original page from this person, a lot of your artists bring them with them. Writers will sometimes bring scripts that you can get signed, which is super cool. There's, some people will bring collected editions of their work. And so there's a good opportunity if you didn't bring something to buy something at their table. And it's a good way to get something signed and, have a personal experience. But do yourself a favor and do that because those are memories that I was lucky enough with Neal Adams and George Perez to have those experiences because of conventions. There's so many people listening to this, they're nodding like I did the same thing. And it's cool that you have those opportunities. So take the shot at them while you have the chance because when they're creators that have meant something to you, it's great to have that experience. So speaking of conventions and stuff like that, let's jump to something else. We have not done a contest on the show in ages, and I love doing that kind of stuff. And I look at contests as a way to drum up some excitement, but also as a thank you to those of you that listen to the show. So I came up with a wacky idea for our first contest, and I want to incorporate contests at least quarterly, maybe more, back into the show. And I'm doing this in conjunction with dcbservice.com. They're kind enough that they give us a certain allotment, which helps offset our costs. So I'm pumping that back into the show this time around. And basically, this contest is truly going to be a thank you to our listeners. Here's all you have to do. Participate. And what I mean is, all the cool people that participate in our Facebook group, starting today through midnight, June 8th. If you participate in the Facebook group, you post, you comment on a post, you participate in conversations, you got every one of those as an entry. Because I love our Facebook group. I reference it very often and I genuinely mean it. It's one of the first places I go to get information. I appreciate you. Every time you're posting, you got an entry into the contest. Voicemails. We're kind enough that we have people that call in and voicemail into the show. Every one of those voicemails from here till June 8th, midnight June 8th, is an entry. So please call in. Emails. We have ragingbullets@gmail.com. Easy way to email us. If you're like, I don't like doing the whole voicemail thing, but I got something I want to say. I got a comic I want to review, something I want to shout out. I do a podcast. I do a blog or something I want to get the word out about. Send those in. That's an entry into the contest. Parodies. If you look at our show website, you're going to see comic strips. Where's What Not Now's, which is where they took, it says Where's What Not Now, but it really was you and they often did you and me, where it was basically putting us in wacky situations. At the time, I said you were our Waldo. Show us where Jim is now. And people embraced it with Photoshop. Photoshop has come so far. Feel free to do that. A lot of you follow us on social media, Facebook. It's very easy to grab pictures of us. And if you need something for a parody that you want to do, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help you make it easier for you. If you like to draw some comic strips. They can be show related, things like that, DC related, anything that we can post on our website. It's a great way to participate, beef up our content on our website. You want to do a review of a comic or something like that and post it on our website. I'm happy to put that down, come up with a little title for it. Each one of those can be an entry. I'm trying to make it easy. If there's something I didn't list here that you think is a way you can participate in the show or participate to contribute to the show, let me know. And I certainly want you to get credit for it. So it's between now and midnight, June 8th. Anything you do for the podcast or, to participate in the podcast is an entry. So I'm trying to make it easy and simple and let people be creative and kind of just do their thing. We've had song parodies, things like that people have done over the years. They've been great. Have at it. Have fun. And here's the prizes. So first prize winner is going to get their choice of which one they want. We've got the Animal Man Omnibus hardcover, which I just pre-ordered. We've got Batman Earth 1 Complete Collection trade paperback. I just pre-ordered. Superman 78 hardcover. I just pre-ordered. So those are our three prizes. First prize winner gets first choice. Second prize winner gets the choice of what's remaining. Third prize winner will get the remaining prize. But it's a thank you to those of you that participate in the show. I'm trying to keep this one simple. I'm going to reintroduce contests, so we're going to do these periodically now, and that's something that I really want to do between now and just going forward, periodically throw a contest back into the show. It's really a thank you to all of you. It's also to make this fun, and if people have ideas for contests or things like that for the future, feel free to shoot them my way. I certainly am open to ideas. This one I tried to keep simple because I want to implement it quickly, and I really feel like there's people who do a lot of really cool things for us, cool ways they shout us out, things like that. I want to acknowledge you, and that's the whole purpose of this. So I hope that's fun, and thank you for all of you and all you do for the podcast. That's what that's all about. Jim, you actually shouted this out yesterday, and when we were texting back and forth, and one of the pieces you mentioned was Free Comic Book Day, and the fact that we have got a Dark Crisis intro story that just came out. Dark Crisis is this big event that we've got coming on, and Free Comic Book Day was a part of it. They actually DC released 3 different Free Comic Book Day issues, and Dark Crisis was one of them. So, Dark Crisis Special Edition. What did you think about this one?
Actually, it was a really neat thing. It was a really good, solid story. It wasn't, it was funny because initially when we were talking, I told you it's nothing really, too earth-shattering towards the Dark Crisis story, but it's a good, solid story. Yep. And then as I was rereading it again, I was like, you know what? That's not actually a good assessment of it, Jim, because the story had 3 parts. The issue had 3 parts. One was a story, one was a preview of Dark Crisis, and then the other one was kind of like the history of the Dark Crisis, the Dark Universe, and all that stuff.
The multiverse. Well, it's actually the history of the multiverse,
right? So it's kind of like stuff they just recently talked about. But again, it was a good place to put it for people who have no idea what is the multiverse, what is the Dark Universe, what's the Dark Crisis, all that stuff. So that was kind of a neat thing. But then the first story, as I said, it's a really cool story. It takes place in the Justice League Museum, and it shows Clayface, of all people, trying to steal something from the museum because all the villains are now acting up because the Justice League is gone. And they also show later on how the different all the Doomsday cults are acting up because the Justice League is gone and all that. And at first I was like, this is kind of a neat story, yeah, but then after rereading it, something really did click on me that the Justice League are gone. They are dead. Now, we always kept saying, they're coming back, they're coming back. But this story right here really does show that they're planning on them being gone for a while. They're planning on the Trinity. All the people who died in that issue, are going to be gone for a little while. Now, story-wise, the Action Comics is going to continue on for a little bit because they still got to catch up to where Superman was, with everything going on in War World. Batman's got a bunch of stories that they're still finishing up, Flash is going to continue on, but as Wally is the Flash, they've already started that, and that actually, the Wally stories, Flash, are directly tying into Dark Crisis. But so the characters are going to be still around, and I did air quotes around the word around, but they're gone. And after everything is said and done, I'm now at the point where I don't know for certain when we're getting them back, because that was a cool line. Because after Wally shows up, takes care of Clayface, he does a really cool thing where he takes the kids on a real tour of the museum. And so here's the Flash walking with these 3 kids, showing them the different stuff, talking to them. And the one kid asks them, are they actually gone? Will there be a Justice League again? And he's like, the thing about the Justice League is, they embrace the new. It's not a question of if there will be or even when, but who. And I love that statement, that notion. And when in the book, there's this cool image of all the different legacy heroes that could step in and take over the roles of the Justice League. So I'm now changing my story, because I was initially thinking we're going to have the Dark Crisis. After it's done, the Trinity would be back. I'm changing my mindset on that. I think we're going to have a period where the Trinity doesn't return. I think Dark Crisis is going to be solved by the new Justice League.
Can I take that speculation out of it for a second? This isn't me disputing you. So hold that thought. But here's what we know from the checklist from this. The earliest, the absolute earliest, if you're going off of that Dark Crisis is, let's say issue 7 of Dark Crisis, the culmination of Dark Crisis brings back the Trinity. Let's say that, okay? That's December at the earliest, which means it's really, if 2022 now, from now on, 2022 on, Justice League's off the table. That group, that past, unless unless the story surprises us and they come back earlier than I'm thinking, we're going to have the rest of 2022 with them off the table. That's a long time. I mean, even, and that's, then you add on what you're saying is a potential piece, which could very well be the case. 2020, some point in 2023 at the earliest is when we're going to get them back. Right. That's pretty bold. And it makes the story very intriguing. And this did get me, to your point, I think you're kind of opening up how you're talking about this story. I think you're right. It's setting the stage for what I think is an exciting event. I want to see where this is going to go. Who's going to step up? Who's going to lead? We get kind of some teases here. Nightwing taking on this leadership role because of the fact that, and there's a certain point to that, Nightwing is the old guard in many ways now, at least still standing. He is very much a lead character. It's very appropriate that he's the one at the vigil. At first, I thought it was like a flashback to Bruce.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh my gosh, that's Dick Grayson talking. That was so awesome. It was awesome that at first I thought it was Bruce. In its maturity, its tone, its presentation, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's not him. That's his eldest. That was sweet. I really liked the dialogue of that. And you're right, this is an issue that benefits from like its second read through, where your kind of initial point is, that was a nice little prologue, and then you read it back through and you're like, oh wait, there's a lot more to this than I'm really giving it credit for. And I had the same reaction. So it's interesting the way that you're presenting it now and saying, boy, in retrospect, thinking that through, there's a little more depth to what's going on here. I would agree, the 3 stories that are presented here really do a very nice job of being all-encompassing. And it was nice to see but Wally taking, listen, Wally is, I love Barry. Wally is my Flash. Wally was the one that really made me understand the Flash concept. My love for Barry that I have now is because during Mark Waid's run on Wally West, I really, really understood the Flash concept and then wanted to go back and read more. It's kind of like what Peter David did for me with Aquaman. So it's super cool to see Wally in the forefront in the first story. Then in this second story, Dick Grayson taking the lead at the Vigil and seeing these characters step up and become the new old guard, because they really are now. Wally, Dick, they are your veterans. They are the ones that have been through these situations before and are best suited to be mentors, to be leaders, to pass on what they've learned. Talk about story progression. I really am enjoying this. And this issue does resonate more in like a second read through than it did the first time through. And I love that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, and it's because one of the things, because they also include a Dark Crisis checklist. And it was really neat to see, as you said, the absolute earliest we would get them back, it would be maybe the end of, the final Dark Crisis in December or into 2023. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if we are. I'm at the point now. I don't know if we're going to get them back. And
I think you're right. I think you are presenting a very real possibility. Yeah. I think it could go either way, but I think what you're presenting, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh, Jim may be right on this one. That could be something. Who knows? We'll see where this goes. I actually like that. I don't feel I definitively know where this is going to go. And I like the surprise. I'll be happy with whatever they do right now. I'm enjoying this.
And some of the books that are included in this are worlds without a Justice League. And then they have a focus. We've got a Superman, we've got Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Batman, but we also have Green Arrow. And I was like, of all of them, Green Arrow was the one that stuck out the most to me because you got the Trinity and then you got John Stewart, who was like, he had that godlike powers. I'm like, okay, but Green Arrow, because that was the guy we both talked about when we were talking about the prior with the deaths of the Justice League, how he got killed by, he kind of got killed by Doomsday. So, and I said, I don't know if Green Arrow is coming back, even if they bring the Justice League back, because he didn't die by the supernatural power. So the fact that I saw a world without Green Arrow really had me going, oh man, I'm really now thinking Green Arrow is not coming back just because I see that. But then again, I started thinking, what if everybody who has a world without is not coming back after the event? Now, of all of them,
I disagree.
John,
and here's why I disagree.
Yeah.
Batman's coming back. Superman's coming back. It's when. It's not if, it's when. Now, I think you're presenting an interesting piece earlier with what you were saying as far as, is it going to be at the end of Dark Crisis or going to be later? I don't know. And also, are they all going to come back at the same time, or is it going to be a different path for each? This could be one of those stories where we may be surprised at either how soon we find out what's going to happen with them, or how long it's going to be.
Right.
And I don't know which it's going to be. This is one where my faith in this writer, I really like the writing of Joshua Williamson. My faith in the writer is really driving a lot of my enjoyment right now, because as he's giving me little nuggets, I'm like, I'm just content to go along for this little ride. Where are you going to take me? Because his Flash run was really stellar. So I'm like, okay, where are we going? What you going to do?
And one of the big surprises for me in this, because it was in the preview, because they have a Dark Crisis sneak preview, and they show the different heroes fighting these Doomsday cults. One of the big surprises was I saw female Dr. Light. I'm like, hey, she's still around. That's cool. That one kind of got me going, that's awesome. So I'm wondering I really wonder who the next Justice League will be. Because I 100% think Dick Grayson's stepping into the Batman role. Originally, I was thinking Jace would step up, but I'm like, I don't think so. I think Dick Grayson is going to be their Batman. And I 100% see John, John step. People are already calling him Superman. I think he's going to take over and be there. I
would go back to that, and you can see an image of John as Superman. You see Wonder Girl there. You see Jace. They're showing the new Aquaman. Aquaman. I want to call it. They're together. I don't think that's a throwaway.
I don't know. And there's a lot of possibilities. I'm loving this, man. I really am.
Yeah. I do like the fact that there's this mystery of why are we getting, and they kind of refer to them as like, why are we getting the second tier villains and not the big hitters? Where are they at? And we see, Deathstroke standing in the background watching, because there's something coming. This story is big. There's a reason why we're not getting anything from them. And the question is, what is their role going to be in this? There's a lot to be seen here. And that's going to be an interesting part. Do you think... So part of me is like, are the villains going to have to join the heroes because of how big the threat is? Or are they going to join the evil side because evil is as evil is? Those type of things. What is this going to be? And I'm very, very curious. Or is it going to be a lot more complicated that way? Some will go one way, some will go the other way. It's going to be interesting to see. Even Clayface's reaction is very telling. I'm meant to pretend that I liked them when I didn't. He tried to be good. And you and I both loved that run where he was trying to be on the side of the Angels. And that, now we're seeing him go full on bad again. It's going to be very interesting to see where these characters lie. Yeah.
Well, and you think back to what's going on in Deathstroke Inc. and all that stuff with him and the Shadow War going on right now. Deathstroke is looking at life a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the villain, the Deathstroke villains, whoever's in his Inc. at the end of the Shadow War, working with the heroes for the Dark Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the villains are recognizing Dark Crisis is bad. Because they saw what happens when Luthor and the Legion of Doom tried to make a deal with the evil god, and it almost destroyed everything. So I think they're going to say, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're not going to make those mistakes again. We'll work with the heroes. When the crisis is done, we'll go back to being who we are. And I think we're going to get a tag team, just that, that will they get along kind of tag team going on with the villains and the heroes versus the Dark Crisis. And then after everything is said and done, after that crisis is done, that's where things will get really, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I don't think we're going to get the Trinity. We're going to get anybody who died back in the beginning of next year. I think we're going to go a little while without getting them back, which is going to make things really cool and interesting in their books because, we've got John has his own book, but then Action was always a separate. So what will happen with Action? Detective and Batman books can easily fill in, any of the Bat family could fill into those books and tie in and whatnot. Or I can't see them putting Action Comics on pause. We've got enough story right now in Action to go through the whole War World thing to take us probably through into next year. I'm assuming, just looking at the parts and this and all that stuff. And same thing on the detective side and on the Batman title itself. There's stories going on, and these are events that happened before, Dark Crisis. So, but at the beginning of the year, I don't know I'm kind of very excited. It's as more pieces of the Dark Crisis puzzle comes out, as we see more stuff, I go, that's kind of cool. And
here's the reality for the beginning of the year. There's going to be something happening, some initiative happening. Whether it's the bringing back of the heroes and relaunching them with new creative teams or, something like that, or, as they do, new status quos, new excitement, or it's going to be who's filling their shoes, taking the center stage. It's going to be something like that. It's going to be curious to see what we get back, what is new. I'm hoping we get things like Justice Society back. I'm hoping maybe we get something with the Legion back, with some creative, push behind them. It's going to be interesting to see what 2023 looks like. And I think you're right. It's not easy to pin that down. I think we're supposed to be thinking it's possible to keep them off the shelf for a long time. I think we're also supposed to be questioning whether or not they might come back sooner than we think. I think they're playing completely off the fact that both have been done before, and we're not afraid to do it again. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be a long period of time. I also don't disagree, though, that it could be. So I like that. I actually like that it's not, to me, I don't feel like there's anything I'm reading right now that is making me feel one way or the other strongly. And that's making it more of a mystery. Because to me, it'd be a little less satisfying if you're like, well, gee, they're going to have off the shelf for, good portion of 2023 as well. Well, okay, then I know how Dark Crisis is going to end. I don't know that right now.
Yeah.
I really feel like it's very possible that in Dark Crisis, we could find out very quickly what's happening to them. Because they vanished. We don't know what that means. Where are they? What happened? Like, here's what we don't know. They were taken off the table. What happened to them? Like, are they just erased from existence? I don't know that we completely understand that yet. Be interested to see if we get some, and this isn't something where it has to happen in Dark Crisis. Be interested to get some clarification of that. I'm curious as to what happened. And we've seen before some heady stuff, like let's use Final Crisis as an example. We found out pretty darn quickly in Final Crisis what happened to Batman. Yep. Could this be a situation like that? I don't know. And I like that. One thing I thought this issue did really, really well. There's been a question, I think, of what is continuity now and what's not. What they did in this, and it's one of my favorite things. We've talked about this in the show a couple years ago, I think. Writers have a very clever way of saying, I want all the continuity back. This did a really great job of taking all of those events that have happened and explaining the reason why everything's so wonky is because of this. And let's explain to you what's really been happening. There's the dark and there's the light. They've always been at war. what you thought was happening in Crisis on Infinite Earths, you didn't understand how far that actually goes. That really was the war between the light and the war between the dark. And we started off with the darkness. Then the light blasted its way through until it had cracks in it. Those cracks are what formed the multiverse. The multiverse has been dealing with the war between the light and the dark all along. It came to a head in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Further came to a head with the relaunch of the multiverse with Final Crisis. And that just broadcasted the fact that the real problem is the heroes. And that all goes back to Earth Zero, which is the prime Earth. And I loved that explanation. I'm like, it's funny how you can re-explain something that you're like, yeah, you already know this, but I'm going to put this together in a nice, tight little bow for you. That way you know, and they did it in multiple stories. They've shown that all this continuity you've been reading has all happened. So to your point about the DC Infinite app, read all those stories. Anyone you want to. They all happened. And that's great. I love that. It's a really clever way, in a simple way, tying all this up, bringing it all back together, getting me excited for the fact that, hey, all this continuity you've been reading before happened again, and it's all coming to a head right now in Dark Crisis. Cool. I couldn't be more jonesing for this. And wait, they did also a great way of saying, also, all these other stories that you like, they happened on one of these Earths. It's like, so, yeah, it's all connected. And I like that. I really am a big fan of when they do things like this. I've always been a fan of the multiverse. Continuity, you can tell when continuity gets wonky and you're like, it doesn't make any sense. You can do a story like this and go, all right, I can buy into that. Thank you. Like, you tied it up for me real nicely. As a reader, I've kind of been doing this in my head myself, but you took it to a place or to a level that I didn't expect and really made it fun. And that is fun. I don't know how much that stuff's important to you, but that last story where it explained the multiverse, I'm like, yeah, thanks. Like, as a reader, I appreciate when writers do that. And this is the perfect time to do it before you go into Dark Crisis, because you're going to have people that are lapsed readers that are like, I want to read DC's event. And some of them, one of the criticisms out there, the older guard who've been longtime DC readers sometimes feel disenfranchised. This isn't their universe. Well, this story explains to you how it is, and I think that's really important right now. You want to hook people in that have kind of stepped away while you're not alienating your diehard people that have been around recently. This was a good way to do it because I think it gave a little something for everybody and put us all on the same page. So the people that are coming back that are like, hey, I want to be on board, but, I was not digging where things have been. This is a great way to do it. I think this was smart.
Yes, 100%. I absolutely love this read. So, and anybody, if you weren't able to go out to get the book on Free Comic Book Day, Amazology does have the Free Comic Book Day stuff that you can
all three of them. There's three.
All of them, yeah.
Because there's one on the Super Pets, and then what was the other one? It was I
want to say like Galaxy or something like that.
Yeah, it's a Galaxy, the Prettiest Star special edition. And it's another one of those offshoot graphic novels that are coming out. But the League of Super Pets has a preview of that graphic novel. Have you seen the recent movie teases for that?
I've seen clips of it, of the Super Pets one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen clips of it. I haven't actually had a chance to see it, but I keep seeing these advertisements and trailers and sport thing and whatnot. I'm like, oh man, that looks kind of fun.
It really does. The more I see of it, the more excited I get. It's been a really cool summer. I saw the Doctor Strange movie this week, Multiverse of Madness. That was great. I'm glad we're just getting really cool comic book content. Like, we're kind of cycling through. We're in that season. And these movies that have been delayed because of COVID are now starting to come out. And people are going to them. I don't know what box office numbers are for Doctor Strange, but I was at a wedding on Friday. And a number of people were talking about the fact that they'd already seen it. And it just came out the day before. So I was glad to just hear, and they're people that aren't like diehards like me. So it was nice to see that people were going to see this movie that are just into the films.
Cool.
Just the box office numbers are good because we get more content is the way I look at it. So I'm excited. That Super Pets one, the more I see of the newer previews, I give you a greater idea of the story that's going to be told there. And I think that's going to be a really great summer movie. I love animation, so you have me on like doing it. And boy, the voice cast they've got for that is going to be fun. So I'm excited for League of Super Pets.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Our next discussion is on Joker, issue number 14. The writer is James Tynion IV. Pencils by Giuseppe Camuncoli, with inks by Cam Smith, Arif Peranto on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, Guillaume Marsh and Arif Peranto on the cover, James Stokey, Alan Qua, and Beignet Ortega and Alejandro Sanchez are the variant covers. Dave Wielgos is associate editor, and Ben Abernathy is the editor. And as always, apologies to those name butchering, but this was an absolutely wonderful book.
Well, and it was funny with this one. Joker's one I got behind on, which is unusual for me with any Bat book. And it was just due to timing. This has been one of those years where I've been struggling at times to keep up with some of my favorite titles. I was about halfway through Joker when we talked about doing this on the show. And my first thought was, well, I'm going to start where I left off and keep going. I didn't. I went back to the beginning and read all of this, like the 14 issues and the annual, and really, really loved it. I didn't know if you were caught up on this or not. I was not. So I went back to the beginning and read this and the annual. It's a big read because of the backup story, too. And I really, really love what's being done here. It reads, if you're somebody that hasn't jumped on this book, I do encourage you, because this is season 1. Next issue 15, is going to be the end of season 1. Then it's going to come back for a season 2. I'm really, really glad they did this book. It's very character-driven. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong on this one. This is like a sequel of sorts to Killing Joke. And I say that in the best possible ways. You don't have to, it's funny, you don't have to have read Killing Joke because they give you what you need. But I feel like it deals with a lot of things that were maybe left lingering with Killing Joke that have been sort of dealt with in stories, but never really with this level of depth. Because I think it's so personal to Jim Gordon, there's some great bits with Barbara. This story does a lot. It also ties up all of Tynion's, and if I'm butchering his last name, I am so sorry because I really, really love this writer. It ties up so many of his runs in different books from all the Bat Family books, including like Talon and stuff like that. It really is tying things up in a nice, neat bow. Some dangling threads that I wondered about, and that was what was happening there. And I loved that. There's a lot of story going on here and a lot of depth, and this is very accessible. If you have not been reading any of the other stuff, you can read Joker. The story does a great job of giving you everything you need. But if you've been reading all of it too, there's something special in feeling like, wow, this is a nice culmination. But I love the fact that I felt like, wow. What I loved most about Killing Joke is I think the psychological aspect of it, and this addresses a lot of that in ways that I think you needed to do in more of a long-form story like this. I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed this. What was this like for you? Well,
I've been keeping up on it, but I had a habit of periodically going back and reading from the beginning through. Mm-hmm. I kept doing that over and over again, and it wasn't like because I was lost or confused. I just so enjoyed reading it like that. And then especially when like I did a full read through from 1 through 14, when you're like, hey, let's do that. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So I once again pulled it, went from 1 through to 14. Absolutely love this. And it was funny because as you were saying how you saw this as a sequel to Killing Joke, I am sitting there going, yes, nodding my head 100%. Because when we first started talking about the book, I really didn't see it. But as you get into this and you start, as a lot of the internal stuff going on with Gordon, when you really just see how much Killing Joke affected him. And that's the thing I love about this story. Yeah, it's a great Joker story. But this, for me, is an absolutely fabulous Jim Gordon story because it really does show the man behind the badge, the man behind who we always say great Gotham stories, great Batman stories have great Jim Gordon in it. This really does show just how much Gordon was dealing with on behind underneath the surface, in the back of his mind, where everywhere he's looking, he just keeps hearing that laughter. He just keeps reminded of what happened to him. Throughout his entire life, he always has that. And even just some of the stuff where they did in earlier issues where they're talking about just how the job destroyed his marriage, how the job destroyed his life, but he kept pushing forward. And I just absolutely loved the Jim Gordon part of this. And it's funny because they very easily could have called this Jim Gordon and not call it the Joker because he was such a pivotal character in this. But obviously, you got to call it the Joker because of it is the Joker story. But this really was for me a great Jim Gordon story, and I'm absolutely I was kind of sad to see it ending, and then I'm like, I heard there's going to be another season. Awesome. It has me wondering, are they going to continue the Gordon Joker story, or is it going to be Joker and somebody else?
And who's writing it?
Like that.
And really, I think what we're going to find out is who's going to write season 2.
Right.
So that part's going to be interesting. I was nodding as you were talking about what you were loving because you're right. It's got to be called the Joker because of the nature of the story. But like Killing Joke isn't just about Batman and the Joker. It's about so much more. The Joker is about so much more. It's not just about him. Obviously, Jim Gordon, my gosh, you could make an argument that you could take the Joker title off and put Jim Gordon on there and it would work. It's hard to, you could call it vengeance too.
Yes, definitely vengeance.
Yeah.
You really could call it that.
But I think it's smart to call it the Joker because I think it's the right draw for the book. As far as, him being the catalyst of everything in this. But the Sawyer family and, the reveals. And here's the piece. Obviously, because we're talking about issue 14 and we already did a spoiler warning. I did not see the return of Bane coming, and I loved every minute of that. That was so sweet. Because I figured they're going to talk about somebody I thought they were going to shelve for a while. I thought vengeance meant and what a great swerve that was. Because I thought vengeance meant that's going to be the new Bane and we're going to see her for a while and he'll eventually come back. Sure, another writer will bring him back at some point in time. I loved the way they handled him and her in this and kept me first of all, I'm wondering how this story is going to wrap up with the two of them because we got one more issue. But it also made me wonder, what does the future hold for them going forward? It was such a great handling of the Bane story because I thought originally when I saw the big coded character, I'm like, is that going to be the other Sawyer, the one that was locked up in Arkham? I didn't know if he was just playing out muscle until I started to realize he was calling the shots.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, who is that?
Yes.
And I admit, I did not see it coming until the reveal. And you may have, I didn't. And I loved that I didn't see it coming because it was one of those cool reveals where this is so neat that I can go back and reread the issue and go, it was all there. Sure. Yeah. But I didn't see it. And I love that I didn't.
Yeah. And I would love to say, I saw it all along, but I did not. 100. I'm right along with you. I was thinking that was muscle. Yep. I was not thinking anything. And then the same kind of like you with like when realizing, wait a minute. They're calling the shots. And even then, it still should have registered in my brain, really big, really smart, who is that? That's Bane. But it didn't because I'm still thinking Task Force Z Bane, and I'm like, that's where Bane is. He's tied up with all that stuff. No, he's here. I'm like, oh, that is awesome. So I absolutely love the fact that it is Bane. And I'm really curious to see, again, you think back to the Secret Six Bane, where he kind of took, Scandal under his wing as his daughter, and he was looking out for her and trying to help her through all of her issues. So there is that caring fatherly side of Bane. And it's interesting because he's not the soft and gentle father. He is a heavy-handed father, and you see that with Vengeance, but he is also caring about her. He is also wants her to, overcome the mind control that her creators put into her. He's like, you have my blood in you. You must rise up against this. And I really did love those kind of moments. Again, these are some great Bane. I'm like, this is the cool Bane that I really enjoy. I love the Bane that broke the bat and all of that Bane, but some of the later tellings of Bane, where you kind of see sort of a Black Adam style to him, where he's still a villain, he's still a heel, he's still a bad guy, but there are redeemable qualities in him. And I like seeing Bane for me is a really big yin and yang, where he's got the light and the dark and it's all that meshing together, and it's which side he has more control is depending on where he is, in the current story being told. And I like seeing that. Again, this is the same kind of stuff where, a really great writer can take these characters and use them this way. I'm like, this story is absolutely wonderful read through. And it's, again, when issue 15 comes out, I'm going to, again, read it from 1 through 15, just because it is such a monumental story to be told.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about Bane, especially when you look back at Nightfall. You have to, when you read Nightfall, you have to read the prelude stuff, from Bane's first appearance straight on through, where, Vengeance of Bane, all the issues leading up to Nightfall. There's a development of a character who he's very complex, and there's a strategy to Bane. It's funny how when you hear some of the original part, that Bane wasn't really supposed to be the villain of Nightfall, it was always supposed to be Jean-Paul Valley. Yet Bane was one of, to me, the highlights. Believe me, I love Azrael. We're actually getting a new Azrael series, which is going to be sweet. I'm kind of dropping that out of nowhere, but it was on our Facebook group, and I love Azrael. So the idea of reading more Azrael, I don't know which Azrael it's going to be. I think it's Jean Paul, but it doesn't matter to me. I love the concept, and it'll be great to see Azrael brought back. But to me, Bane is one of those characters that when you turn him into a lackey or some form of just mindless beast, you lose something from him. And I think they've done a great job with Vengeance of playing with that concept. Bane is somebody they couldn't control. They've tried, and it's failed. And I love that this whole idea of this story was one where they were trying to control Bane, wasn't working. So they created from his blood another Bane, one that they could control. But because she holds his genetics, it's more complicated than that. And I like that right from the get-go, she was her own complex character, and her interactions with Jim Gordon, I think it's one of the reasons why I didn't see Bane coming, was because with her interactions with Jim Gordon, they were telling such a compelling story of she's more than what they're presenting. And they were adding the layers in, and I'm like, well, of course this makes sense, because she's got so much that she's inheriting from Bane that she would have this. Add on to that the layer of Daddy's home. It was so great.
And again, I love the fact that we have a new Bane. And, initially, because, when I was thinking about it, okay, new Bane, that'd be kind of interesting. But they didn't make Bane light. They're giving this character, giving Vengeance her own story, her own identity.
Right.
And I think that for me was something that was really, because when they first saw the idea and the concept, I was like, oh, okay, that should be interesting for a while. And then you really start, the interaction with Gordon for me was something that, again, really made me go, I want to see more of this character.
Yep.
I don't want this character to end here. So I'm thinking in my head, the further stories are going to be her. I wasn't that again. It added to the fact that I never saw Bane coming into the story because I thought everything was going to be about her. And I loved how, in some of the earlier issues, she was keeping Gordon around because she knew they could control her and needed Gordon around to stop the control, to stop it just going the way they wanted. She wanted her own control on it, and Gordon was her kind of her ace in the hole to stick it to her controllers. And I thought that for me was a really neat concept. And I saw her fighting through the control. I saw Gordon being the one to help her fight through the control. And again, I never saw Bane showing up being the one to help her fight through the control, which I absolutely love the fact that he's doing that and he's with her on that. So these were some great stuff where I'm like, as I'm reading through this series going, oh yeah, they can do this and they can do that. And all these side stories that are flying through my head as you see Gordon being Gordon. And the one sequence I absolutely love, and this is one of those things where so bravo to the art team. He's in questioning. They're going through. It's the interrogation. They're trying to get him to break. They're trying to get him every time they have him in an interrogation room, they're trying to interrogate Commissioner Jim Gordon. He knows every trick in the book, guys. It's not going to work. And throughout some of this, he's actually called him on this. But in this issue, I love when she's dropping the pictures down of drop the Joker, of Vengeance, of Bane, and she's really just giving him the heavy hand, and it's like, did you kill the Joker? And just the look on his face, that smirk, that grin, I'm like, oh my God, I love this sequence. I love this page because, again, there's so many tricks that she's trying to do that's never going to work on him because he knows them. Not only does he know them, I'm like, oh my God, I absolutely loved this question sequence. Oh,
some of them he wrote the book on.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Which is outstanding. I really enjoyed that sequence too, and it was a great showcase of Jim Gordon. I want him back in Gotham. I want to see him take an active role back in Gotham again. I don't care when, see the path, but this story should build you to that, where you get to know him and you miss him in the book. You want to see him. And I was really glad with everything that's been going on in Gotham. They also did a good job of time placement, where by now I know where this story takes place in relation to all the other events that are going on in Gotham, because Jim Gordon comes back and is reflecting on some of those pieces. Issue 14 was really good in kind of saying, okay, right about now you're probably all wondering, when is all this happening?
Yeah.
So we're gonna lay this out for you in a way that makes sense with the story, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, and again, it really does fit into, because they explained that he was away for the Joker War, because the Joker even left after his whole thing in the rise of Saint and Scarecrow, A-Day, all that stuff. Joker wasn't in town for any of that. And that's when this story is kind of going on. And even the birth of Arkham Tower, Gordon and Joker were out and about for that. So you're seeing exactly where this stuff takes place. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Again, tell me where it fits in the storyline. If you're not going to give me a little editor's note, this right here was a wonderful way to do it because, again, it gets a really cool sequence. Now, the other thing I loved is how Gordon kept going back to his days in Chicago, and especially that one first sergeant of his who, gave him that advice. When you see evil, true evil, aim for the head. And I'll tell you, within the Bat Code is no killing, and I love that about Bruce. I love that about all of the Bat family, but with police using excessive force, I'm very anti that. But I am also very pro, sometimes you've got to there's a level of force that is necessary, and it happens. Now, this sequence with the Joker, with do you kill the Joker, do you not kill the Joker? I love whenever there's the great debates on that, because throughout this, Joker is like, I've won. No matter what happens, I've won here. And again, he's right. He has. He's ruined how many lives, how many families, how much existence, how much of the psyche of Jim Gordon has he completely messed with? So in the Joker's mind, he's won. Whether Gordon pulls the trigger or doesn't, Joker wins. And I love just that ideology, that notion throughout this whole story. Joker has been doing that. Joker has been saying that. Everything he's done to Gordon, to all the different various criminal elements out there, what he did with Joker War, what he did, with everyone and anything that he's ever come in contact with. No matter what happens, he can claim the win. And I love that concept.
Well, for Joker, too, the thing with Joker is he always looks for the psychological advantage. It's easy to remember it's easy to forget, I should say, in his insanity, that there is a very diabolical and smart lunatic underneath all of that. He has the ability, he went from a situation where they were going to cook him, and he took advantage of that situation and managed to escape. He is a guy who survives the most, other people would crumble in that situation. He didn't. He found a way to use it to his advantage and ended up doing to the chef what was going to happen to him. And laughed the whole time, I'm sure. It's such an interesting character who is so well written in this. This whole antagonizing and getting into the head of people that he does, what he's doing with Jim Gordon, is all about the advantage. He is trying to right now cast some form of doubt in Jim Gordon's mind on his course of action. He's trying to figure out what Jim Gordon's course of action is. Take even the fact that he knows that Jim's making a tough decision right now. There's 2 decisions on the table. If he can manipulate the situation to his advantage, he is going to. And he's trying to. And I loved seeing that. Is Riddler here too? Two-Face? That weird old guy in the green cape? Condiment King? How many Batman baddies did you get in on your big scheme? And I loved that bit. Jim Gordon telling him to shut up is fine, because it's just proof that the Joker's poking holes and picking at scabs and doing the thing that the Joker does so well. I love that.
Yeah. Well, in the Court of Owls tie-in.
Yep.
That was another one. Did not see that coming. And again, another James Tynion story with Talon. I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is absolutely brilliant. And I love how, throughout the beginning, once we realized it was the Court of Owls, or we thought it was the court, hired Gordon. Then we're like, okay, it's Talon. No, it's the layering of everything, because the one Talon that was in Oracle was actually James Jr.'s body that they brought back, and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much different tie-ins with the Gordon family, the Talons, Gotham, Joker, but again, it was one of those things. I was thinking, okay, why are the court going after him? They could have a long time ago gone after the Joker. Why now? Well, they answer it. They told us they laid it out brilliantly with her father who was running the court, and then he got kind of let aside, and just how much the Joker taking on the Joker, what that will do for them, and I was like, this is awesome.
Well,
this is absolutely wonderful.
And here's the question. Is the forgiveness that he's trying to figure out with Barbara because of Joker or James Jr.?
I'm thinking everything that happened with the Joker, not James Jr.
I'm going to disagree. I think it might be James Jr. I don't think he kills I'm pretty sure he doesn't try to kill the Joker. I think Jim Gordon's coming back and dealing with the fact that I went down a pretty dark hole here, but I came out the other side. I think the James Jr. resolution is going to be a challenging one in this scenario. I could be wrong. That's my speculation, though, right now, is that I don't think Barbara's having issues with it. I think maybe there's some residuals as far as everything this whole Joker situation put them through. But I don't think Jim compromises him. I think Jim comes as close as he probably ever would to compromising himself. But I don't think he goes completely over the edge. And I think the James Jr. situation is going to present some serious tension between him and Barbara.
Okay, now when I say the Joker, I want to clarify. I do not believe Jim Gordon killed the Joker. I 100% do not believe that. Because again, I think Gordon, recognizes that, as a cop, sometimes there is the use of lethal force, and sometimes you have to do it. And the underlining rule that most police officers will say is if there's a life in immediate danger, or if there's immediate danger if the person gets away. And the Joker is a very definition of if the Joker gets away, he's going to kill people. So, any law enforcement could very easily clear Gordon on the shot. Now, granted, the Joker is unarmed. He's got the gun to the back of his head. It'll be a very difficult clearing, but again, it's the Joker, so they could. I don't think Gordon took the shot. I think the issue that Barbara and Jim have right now, where he's like, "Hey, do you forgive me yet?" is how much he went rogue on this whole process. How he completely did, he played her a little bit, throughout this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the forgiveness. But I don't think, the killing the Joker is even on the table. I don't know where the Joker is. I don't know what Gordon did. And that's why I'm so eagerly looking forward to issue 15. But I 100% do not believe Gordon took the shot. Now, if when we get 15 and I see he did take the shot, I'll have zero issue with that. Because as I said, there is that understanding. There is that, that reasoning that, sometimes you got to take the shot. But I don't think he did.
Well, that's different. See, I would have zero issue with him taking the shot, as we so say, because, that would be, to help save others and things like that. In those circumstances, I just don't see him executing the Joker. And I don't think Jim will let him win. But boy, the ending of this issue, where is the Joker? Like, for some reason, I thought this was the issue that was going to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when we got to the end, and I'm like, wait, because this issue moved. Boy, did it, because it answered a lot of questions. And with Cressida and the Court of Owls and things like that, it's like, wow, it's great. You see Batman at the end, and I'm like, we still don't know.
No, we still don't know, yeah. I love that. And again,
I do too.
This sequence, I love how, Gordon comes in, he pours 2 glasses of whiskey. He knows Bruce is in there. He knows the Bat's in there. And he's like, come on. You don't need to play it. Why don't you just come out and we can have a conversation? And I absolutely love this sequence. I'll be honest with you, I'm hoping in issue 15 we get a notification that Jim knows that Bruce is Batman. I really would love to see that, because I love that moment in the first issue when he lets Barbara know, hey, I know your Batgirl. I know your Oracle. I know all that stuff. That was just a great moment.
I do not think we're going to get that at all. I think there's a part of Jim that does know, and I think Jim revealing that is just as problematic for Jim as it is for Bruce.
Right.
And I think Jim will not do it for that reason. I think that there's, we can sit there as fans and debate over the fact, does he know? If he knew about Barbara, he's a smart guy, probably knows. I think there's a reason why he's not revealing it. If he does, maybe not revealing it to himself, if that makes sense. You sometimes go, I can head down this rabbit hole, and if I do, I'm going to keep going. I think Jim knows enough to be dangerous and has decided that that's good enough, and he's going to leave it right there because of the fact that it compromises him in his own way and compromises Bruce. And I think there is a mutual respect between the two of them that keeps him from letting come to the surface what he knows deep down. So I don't think we're going to see that at all, other than the fact that I think it's been hinted at plenty over the years, and we might get hints and little nuggets, but I think the closest you get to it is what you get right here, where he's saying, come on, you don't need to do this. Let's sit down and have a conversation. That's his way of saying, let's talk this through. I got something I want to talk about, and let's do it. This whole thing's going to be very, very complicated. He's too cool at the end of this.
Yeah.
And it leads me, that's what I'm feeling like the issue here is. He didn't compromise himself when it came to the Joker. even though we skirted some really heavy lines.
Yes.
And can be called out on those lines. I do think if that is James Jr., that's the Talon, which, all signs point to the fact that it is, in fact, James Jr., that cleanup, there has to be some resolution to that, right?
Yeah. Well, part of me is thinking a trade. James Jr. for the Joker. And they'll try to bring back his son.
Yeah, who knows what this is going to
So
look like.
the court gets the Joker.
And remember, he and Barbara had serious issues over James Jr.
Right.
So that's another piece that's between them. The fact that he accused her as Batgirl, even though he knew she was Batgirl. And I'm glad the story, if you're going to reveal that he knows. That they told that story. And that's really important. So, wow. Great book. All right, so let's talk about one of the other things this story's had, and we haven't really had a chance to talk about it. There's a whole other story going on in this, which is interesting because, sometimes when they do these co-features, they're directly related, and this is related in the sense of its punchline, but we've had this ongoing punchline story with her court case that wrapped up last issue, where she has been found not guilty. Well, now this issue is the first story where we've got, that she's been declared not guilty, so she's out and about, and we're seeing some of the after effects of her early years, where she was attempting to develop a Joker toxin and actually killed multiple people with her version of the Joker toxin, which has clearly an addictive quality to it. This was a great little backup story, telling us a little bit more about Punchline. I am liking this character more and more as she's being developed, because you got a character now who you want to separate her from Harley Quinn, right?
Yeah.
There's certain things where you can say, okay, there's certain similarities, but she's a different sort of animal. And I'm really, really glad in the way they've developed her because of the fact that you can see some very distinct differences between the two. Their backgrounds, their history. Harley was a psychologist. You've got this one who's approaching this from a whole other avenue. And this sequence where you've got somebody who is a victim, this Madison, who is a victim of her experimentation. And Punchline looks like, the one-up's been had on her. She was called in there. And really what the person wants is another shot of the gas.
Yeah.
It's an addict saying, hey, this is all I want is to be taken to that place again. She's like, hey, look me up if you survive this, because there's no guarantee she's even going to survive. It was a cool little backup story. What did you think about the whole Punchline thread through all of this?
I've absolutely loved this. Punchline is a great villain. Harley Quinn is fun. She's a great character, and they're really doing some awesome stuff with her. But I love the fact that they very clearly defined Punchline as a completely different entity than Harley Quinn. Harley was the Joker's sidekick. Punchline is his partner. Big difference in the dynamics, in who she was. When the Joker's away, Punchline will continue on doing her own thing. And the next Joker, I did air quotes around the word Joker, will be Punchline. Joker doesn't need to come back to Gotham. Gotham has their own character. And with this whole story about her being found not guilty is awesome. Because, again, there's the whole double jeopardy thing. You can't charge her again for these same trials, for these same crimes. There's all this different stuff, and how it laid out, how she got acquitted. And as much as I'd like to say, oh, no, that would never happen in the real world, yes, it would. Because it laid it out beautifully in that how she played the system, how she manipulated the system. It really does show her individual intelligence. Just like with the Joker. The Joker is crazy. Nah, yeah, he is, but there is still that intelligence. There is still that strategery of the Joker. Punchline has that same kind of intelligence. She's got that same level of planning. She's got that same kind of groove and vibe to her. And I absolutely love the fact that we have this character now in Gotham, in the DC universe that they can use. And with her getting the initial acquittal, found not guilty, I'm really curious what happens next for her. Where is that going to play out? What is she going to do? And you talk about Madison, this character. Oh my God! They took a couple issues to give us a great, a couple pages to give us this great backstory on this vet who, because of everything she dealt with, she is a little off. It's the PTSD. It's
Sure.
the post-traumatic stress. On top of it, just the general life, and then you add to it her version of the Joker toxin. Oh my God!
Right.
What's going to happen with her? I'm absolutely loving that character. It took me like 3 or 4 pages, and I'm like, yes, I want to see more of her. I want them to give her a cool code name.
Yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see where the Punchline story goes. I think next issue, I'm going to be curious to see the next issue of Joker. I'm assuming there's going to be one more Punchline backup in that. I'm hoping season 2 follows a similar format with this book, where we get Joker and Punchline, if that makes sense. The 2 little stories. I don't know what season 2 would look like or what direction it's going to go in, because I'd like to see more Punchline. And I think she's a character either graduating into her own book or continuing in this format. I like this format, actually, for her. I think it works really well. So I don't really care what they do, but I would be very content with the Joker season 2, dealing with both characters. Because it's kind of fun that the Punchline story is its own thing, which I don't care if they converge in season 2, because of the fact that the Joker might be back in town or something like that. But there's something to getting, I think, some more character development with Punchline that shows that she's more than just the Joker's lackey, that I've really enjoyed. It makes her a very strong character.
Oh, yes, definitely. And just so we know, the Punchline story, so the main story that's been running through the first 13 chapters, that was co-written with James Tynion IV and Sam Johns. Art on that was Mirka Andolfo, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters Aria Maher, with editor Dave Wheelgoes, group editor Ben Abernathy. This issue had a separate side story that was written by Alex Paknadel on the story. Art was by Vasco Georgiev, colors by Rain Beredo, with letters by Becca Carey. Jessica Burnbay is the assistant editor. Dave Wheelgoes is the editor. And again, apologies on the butchering on the names, because I really do want to say just how much amazing this story has been. And this one-shot story, again, giving us this intro of Madison, which I'm assuming she's going to get a cool code name, because I 100% want to see her again. And she will work great with Punchline, because I think we need to start building the Punchline crew, building the team that Punchline has. And I 100% want to see this.
Yeah, I'm really loving the fact that they're taking a chance to explore some, we're getting this with Urban Legends. We're getting this exploration of other characters in the Bat universe. And what I loved about this story is it also took advantage of bringing in Harper Row, who is a character who we haven't seen get a lot of screen time in quite a while. And I think her use in this was really great. Always seeing Leslie Tompkins,
yes.
that's always a great character to see as well. So very similar to the main story with the Joker, where we're talking about how great it was that it spotlighted so many other characters. Punchline's done a great job of doing that too. And it's something that's neat. This one was a great story because you're right. It's introducing this new character that may or may not have, who knows if this character is going to appear again. But I would love to see Madison, continue and be a potential lackey for Punchline, depending on where Punchline's story goes. Punchline seems to be an opportunist and seems to get this following of people. There doesn't seem to be a regular running crew. I can kind of see that being her modus operandi too. We'll see where it ends up going. But
with her being acquitted, I think that's going to change. You think about it, she's been found not guilty. So she really her followers are going to grow. She's going to get her own little cult following she already has it, and so with her and her intelligence, I 100% see her taking advantage of all of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, I don't want to say Lex Luthor because I don't want to imply that she's going to go for the billions, but she's going to have that thing where, the heroes know she's a villain, but the people can't prove it. And she's got these people who will swear by her and who are loyal to her to a fault. I think, we're going to see some neat stuff on it. I really think there's some great potential in this character.
Yeah. There's so much to be told. I guess what I'm seeing with her is I think she's a complex character that we're continuing to learn more about. So I don't think it's hard to pin down what her path's going to be after this in the best possible, most complimentary way. I like the fact that I'm learning more about her. Yeah. And I feel like there's still more to learn, if I'm making any sense at all. So I see what you're saying is a possibility, but I also see her as being very complex and us maybe not fully understanding her yet. And I like that aspect of it where I can nod yes to what you're saying, but say I'm not 100% sure that's how it's going to go. And I love that.
Yeah, I know. Me too, big time. I'm as defiant, as definitive as I sound. I could be completely wrong, and okay, we'll see where it goes. Because again, they've done such a great laying such a great foundation for this character. Character introduced in the Joker War that everyone think, oh, this is the new Harley Quinn. No, she's so much more than that. And then with this backup story, again, really fleshing out who she is, we're still learning stuff about her. Just the story that was told while she was in prison, just the mind games, everything she was doing was just absolutely brilliant in there. And then just any story with her, I'm absolutely loving this character. So, yeah, give me more. Feed me more.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address. Both great ways to contact us. RagingBullets.com is where you'll find out news about the most recent releases to the podcast. That feeds into our Twitter and our Facebook fan page. We are, as always, proud to be part of a Facebook group community, and if you haven't had a chance to join our community, I really appreciate the people there who post, particularly news about upcoming news about DC books, DC in media, also just pop culture in general. The whole team over there do a great job of just keeping me up to date on what's going on, and I really appreciate it. So if you haven't checked it out, it's a great group. Share your thoughts on the podcast episodes as well. And we love hearing from all of you. So thank you for everyone who participates over there. The About Us section of our show website is where you can find out how to connect with us on social media and gaming platforms. If you prefer to contact us that way, we update it regularly as new information comes about. So it's a good place to click periodically. I always put the dates at the top on the website so you know that we've recently updated it. So that way if there's something new you can contact us or connect with us on, you know how to get to us. We are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, who are sponsoring our current running contest. Jim, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
We've got a lot of Dark Crisis stuff going on. First off, Dark Crisis #1 has been relisted. Plus, there is a new variant cover J. We have Dark Crisis #2. We have Dark Crisis Young Justice #2. And we have Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Superman one-shot. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I do want to shout out once again the deals of the week. And check these out because they're always offering new books in this particular section. Batman the Dark Knight Detective Trade Paperback Volume 6, $24.99 regularly, 50% off only $12.49. DC 1 Million Omnibus, the 2022 edition. This hardcover is $99.99 regularly, 50% off only $49.99. DC's Tales of the Super Pets, $19.99 regularly, 50% off only $9.99. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, we're going to be back, and we're going to start first by chatting about Flashpoint Beyond. We meant to talk about that this episode, but we wanted to do the Free Comic Book Day issue instead and bump that just 1 week. And we're going to talk about Batman Killing Time, which is a great mini-series by Tom King that we're going to chat about then. So we will see you next week.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
it's right
Jim,
there.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's not